Welcome to the comfy zone. Make yourself at home.
I'm not sure how much longer I can take this. It's been weeks, maybe even months, since I last saw Earth. I thought I was living my dream, an astronaut exploring the vast expanse of space. But now, I'm not so sure. It started a few days ago. I was doing a routine check outside the spacecraft when I saw something I can't explain. It was a shadow, flickering just out of sight. At first I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but then I saw it again, and again. I tried to brush it off, but it's been haunting me ever since. The shadow seems to be getting closer, following me wherever I go. I feel like I'm being watched, like something is lurking just beyond my vision. Last night, I woke up in a cold sweat, convinced that I heard something tapping on the outer hull of the spacecraft. I scrambled to the control panel trying to see if there was any activity outside, but the sensors showed nothing. I'm starting to think that maybe I'm not alone up here. Maybe there's something out there with me, something that's not human, and I don't know how much longer I can last without losing my mind. As the days pass, my paranoia grows stronger. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched, but I can't find any evidence to support my suspicions. Until today. I was doing another routine check when I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, and my heart stopped. It was me. Or rather, someone who looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, same suit. It was like I was looking in a mirror, except I wasn't. I tried to radio back to the spacecraft, but my voice wouldn't work. The figure started to approach me, and I stumbled backwards. As I got closer, I could see its face. It was identical to mine, but with a blank expression that sent shivers down my spine. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in terror, before the figure disappeared. I stumbled back to the spacecraft, feeling like I was going to be sick. I didn't want to believe it, but it was undeniable. There's someone else on board, and they look exactly like me. I've been trying to convince myself that it's just a hallucination, but I know deep down that's not the case. There's something sinister going on here, something that I can't explain. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to confront this doppelganger, or even if I should. All I know is that I can't keep living like this, constantly looking over my shoulder, never knowing if I'm alone. Something has to give. After the encounter with my doppelganger, I retreated back into the spacecraft, feeling like I was losing my mind. I tried to rationalize what I had seen, but it was impossible. It was like something out of a science fiction movie. Then, my radio crackled to life. It was Mission Control, checking in on me to make sure everything was okay. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say, but then the words spilled out of me. Mission Control, there's someone else up here with me. Someone who looks exactly like me. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear the concern in their voices when they responded.
What are you talking about, astronaut? There's no one else in the spacecraft except for you and the crew member, John.
John. That was the name of the crew member who had been with me on this mission. I couldn't believe it. I'd been so convinced that I was alone, that I had overlooked the fact that there was someone else there. I explained what had happened, my voice shaking with relief and embarrassment. Mission Control listened patiently, then assured me that they would investigate the situation further. But in the meantime, they urged me to try to remain calm and focused on the mission. As I hung up the radio, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of skepticism. It seemed too easy, too convenient, but I pushed the thought aside, telling myself that I was just overreacting. I'd always been prone to flights of fancy, and this was no different. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that there was more going on here than I realized. I just didn't know what it was yet. As I tried to shake off my doubts, my mind kept going back to one nagging question. If John was on the spacecraft with me, why didn't I remember him being there? I scoured my memories of the mission, but I couldn't recall any interactions with him. It was like he had just appeared out of nowhere. And that's when I remembered something else. When I had first been selected for this mission, I had been told that I would be going alone. No crew members, no one to keep me company, just me and the void of space. It was like a puzzle piece falling into place. Had there been a mistake? Had someone sent John up here without my knowledge? And if so, why? As I thought back on my interactions with John, I realized that something had always seemed off about him. He tried too hard to act human, always forcing small talk and making awkward jokes. It was like he didn't know how to act like a real person. The more I thought about it, the more suspicious I became. What if John wasn't really a crew member at all? What if he was some kind of imposter sent up here to spy on me or sabotage the mission? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I tried to focus on my duties and push the thoughts of John's strange behavior to the back of my mind. But it was no use. Every time I saw him, I felt a sense of unease. As the days passed, John's behavior only became more erratic. He would spend long hours in the ship's lab, tinkering with equipment and muttering to himself. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was up to something. One night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a strange noise coming from the lab. It sounded like metal clanking against metal, over and over again. I tried to ignore it, telling myself that John was just working on some equipment. But then the noise stopped, and there was only silence. I lay there in the darkness, listening for any sign of movement, but there was nothing. And that's when the fear hit me. What if John was up to something dangerous? What if he was sabotaging the mission? I couldn't just sit there and wait for something to happen. I had to act. I got out of my bunk and I made my way to the lab. As I approached, I heard voices. But they weren't coming from John. They were coming from the radio. I listened in, feeling a sense of relief wash over me as I heard the voice of Mission Control on the other end. They were checking in on me just like they had before. But this time, I wasn't alone. I took a deep breath and explained my concerns about John's strange behavior. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Mission Control spoke again. As I explained my concerns about John's strange behavior, there was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Mission Control spoke again.
Astronaut, we need you to stay calm. We've received some strange readings from your spacecraft. Can you confirm that all systems are functioning normally?
I was taken aback. Yes, everything is running smoothly, but what kind of readings are you talking about?
That's classified information, astronaut. We just need you to confirm that everything is okay.
I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should press the issue, but then I remembered my training. When in doubt, follow orders. Everything is fine, I said. No problems here. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and then Mission Control spoke again.
Good. Just stay alert, astronaut. We'll be in touch.
And with that, the radio went dead. I sat there in the darkness, feeling a sense of unease wash over me again. What kind of strange readings could they be picking up from my spacecraft? And why were they being so secretive about it? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I tried to focus on my duties, but my mind kept going back to the strange communication I had just received. And then, just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I heard something. It was a faint clicking noise coming from somewhere inside the spacecraft. I sat up, listening intently, and then it stopped. I lay there in the darkness, heart pounding, wondering if I was just imagining things. But then I heard it again, and this time it was closer. I got out of my bunk, heart racing, and began to search the spacecraft. And that's when I saw it. Standing in the shadows was someone who looked exactly like me. I froze, staring at the figure in disbelief. It was impossible, but there it was, standing right in front of me, looking exactly like me. Who are you? I stammered, taking a step back. The figure didn't answer. It just stood there, staring at me with cold, lifeless eyes. and then, without warning, it lunged forward. I stumbled backwards, barely managing to dodge its attack, and that's when I realized something that was even more unsettling. The figure wasn't just copying my appearance, it was copying my movements too. Every time I stepped to the left, it stepped to the left. Every time I raised my right arm, it raised its right arm. It was like looking into a mirror, but one that had come to life. And then, just as suddenly as it had attacked, the figure stopped. It just stood there, staring at me once again. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't John. This was something else entirely. But then I heard a voice on the radio.
Astronaut, are you okay? We detected some unusual activity on your spacecraft.
It was Mission Control, and with a sense of relief, I realized that I wasn't alone in this. But as I began to explain what had just happened, the figure lunged forward once again. This time, I wasn't quick enough. It tackled me to the ground, pinning me down with surprising strength. And then it began to mimic my movements once again. But this time, there was something different. There was a sense of aggression, a sense of malice that hadn't been there before. It was like the figure was no longer content to just copy me. It wanted to hurt me. I struggled to break free, but it was no use. The figure was too strong. And then, just as suddenly as it had attacked, it stopped. It got up and walked away, disappearing into the shadows once again, and I was left there, lying on the ground, wondering what was going on. This wasn't just some strange experiment. Something was seriously wrong up here in space, and if I didn't figure out what it was soon, I was afraid I might not make it back to Earth alive. I quickly relayed what had just happened to Mission Control, my voice shaking with fear. Mission Control, there's something on board with me, something that looks just like me, but it's not human. It's mimicking my movements, and it just attacked me. I don't know what to do. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear the murmur of voices in the background. Finally, the voice of one of the Mission Control operators came through the speakers.
Astronaut, we understand your concerns, but you need to remember that you're not alone up there. John is an integral part of this mission, and he's been trained to work closely with you. There's nothing to worry about.
But John, that's not John, I protested. It's something else entirely. It's like a copy of me, but not a human copy. It's something else. The voice on the radio was soothing, but I could tell that they were getting frustrated with me.
Astronaut, we assure you that John is a human being, just like you. He's a highly trained astronaut, and he's there to help you complete your mission. Please try to stay focused and keep your mind on the task at hand.
I wanted to believe them, but the fear in my gut was too strong. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong up here in space, and I knew that I had to find out what it was before it was too late. After the call with Mission Control, I tried my best to stay focused on the mission, but the encounter with my doppelganger had shaken me to my core. I couldn't help but feel like there was something sinister lurking in the shadows, something that Mission Control wasn't telling me. I decided to investigate on my own. I went through every inch of the spacecraft, looking for anything out of the ordinary, but everything seemed to be in order. There were no signs of any intruders or anything that could explain what was going on. As I was making my way back to the cockpit, I heard a strange noise coming from one of the storage compartments. It was a soft, scraping sound, like something was trying to claw its way out. My heart pounding in my chest, I slowly made my way over to the compartment. I could feel my palms starting to sweat and my breaths coming faster and faster. And then, with a sudden burst of courage, I flung the compartment open. And there it was, the doppelganger. It was huddled in the corner of the compartment, its lifeless eyes staring straight ahead. It didn't even seem to acknowledge my presence. But then it began to move. Slowly, but deliberately, it made its way towards me. I tried to back away, but my feet wouldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. And then, with a sudden burst of speed, it lunged at me. I fell to the ground, struggling to fend off the creature's attack. It was surprisingly strong, and it seemed to have no qualms about hurting me. But then, just as suddenly as it had attacked, it stopped. It got up and walked away, disappearing into the shadows once again. I was left there, lying on the ground, gasping for breath. I knew that I had to find a way to get rid of the doppelganger once and for all. But how? As I lay there on the ground, trying to catch my breath, my mind raced with questions. Why did the doppelganger keep attacking me, only to suddenly leave without explanation? What did it want from me? I knew that I had to find some answers, but how could I do that when I was trapped in a spacecraft with this thing, with no way to defend myself? I made my way back to the cockpit, trying to come up with a plan, and that's when I heard a faint whisper in my ear.
Help me.
I spun around, but there was no one there. Just the empty, sterile walls of the spacecraft. Who's there? I demanded. Silence. I knew that I wasn't alone up here. There was something else on this spacecraft with me. Something that looked just like me. And I couldn't shake the feeling that it was trying to tell me something. But what? And why? As I pondered these questions, I suddenly realized something that chilled me to the bone. What if the doppelganger was trying to replace me? What if it was trying to take over my body and steal my identity? I knew that I had to act fast if I wanted to survive, but what could I do? I was trapped up here with no way to escape, and no one to help me. Or so I thought. I followed the voice, which sounded like a child's, to the airlock. When I opened the door, I found a small boy curled up and trembling with fear.
Please help me.
The boy whimpered.
I'm so scared.
I was taken aback. What was a child doing on this spacecraft? And how did he get here? As I slowly approached him, I couldn't help but wonder if this was some kind of trick. But as I got closer, I could see the fear in his eyes, and I knew that he was genuinely scared. "What's your name?" I asked gently. The boy looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw something that made my blood run cold. His eyes were unusual, and he had an exact copy of my face.
I'm you,
the boy whispered, and I recoiled in horror. "What do you mean you're me?" I demanded.
I'm the part of you that you don't like.
The boy said.
The part of you that's scared and alone and helpless. And I'm hungry.
With those words, the boy began to transform. His body elongated, his limbs twisted and contorted, and his face stretched into a grotesque, Lovecraftian beast. It was like nothing I had ever seen before, and I realized, too late, that I was face to face with the monster. I tried to run, but it was too late. The monster consumed me, and I felt myself slipping away into darkness.